Good morning and welcome to today's Skye Bioscience webcast as part of the Planet MicroCap Showcase. It is now my pleasure to turn the floor over to your host, Puneet Dhillon, CEO of Skye Bioscience. Sir, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Good day. Thank you to Planet MicroCap Showcase for hosting this virtual conference and the opportunity to participate. Skye Bioscience is an emerging growth company, and my name is Puneet, and I'm the CEO. I'll be making some forward-looking statements, so please refer to our regulatory filings for the details on these risk factors associated with the company. Okay, so for those of you tuning into this presentation on Skye for the first time, there's several important takeaways. At a macro level, we're focused on the development of proprietary, first-in-class molecules to treat disease with high unmet medical needs. We're working on specific molecules that are bioengineered synthetic cannabinoid derivatives that are designed to significantly enhance the therapeutic benefits in a variety of different applications. So I want to be really clear about that we're not working with the cannabis plant or products that are derived from the plant that you can just purchase in a retail cannabis shop. A lot of people get the two confused in terms of pharmaceutical development versus what may be just available over the counter. We're purposefully working with a modified molecule that's really designed to leverage the validating benefits of what cannabinoids can offer while reducing some of the disadvantages that you can see with over-the-counter products. These molecules are based on a partnership and several exclusive licenses with the University of Mississippi. And we've initially concentrated our efforts to take one of these molecules to the clinical stage in the area of glaucoma, which is where I'm going to focus my presentation on today. We have an impressive management team. The entire company, all the members of our team are new that come onto the company in the last 7 to 9 months. They've been involved with startups and involved also in companies where they're taking products from preclinical stage to human trials, as well as done many different types of strategic pharma partnerships. I think collectively we've done almost a dozen different value creating deals. So it's a really unique moment to participate as an investor in Skye. I think more broadly, when you look at the overall cannabinoid space, it's also a very exciting time. We see about 5 different approvals now in the cannabinoid science or cannabinoid derived pharmaceuticals. About 20 different companies, not including academics, that have active clinical programs. So there's a lot of activity, and one unique moment has been at the or at least a validating event has been the acquisition of GW Pharma by Jazz Pharmaceuticals. It was announced in Q1, and it was about for almost $7.2 billion. GW has long been the global pioneer in the cannabinoid space. So by them bringing Epidiolex that was focused on epilepsy, it was a huge milestone in terms of the first plant-derived cannabinoid medicine ever approved by the FDA. So I think collectively, with everything that's happening in the cannabinoid science space, we're really in an era of massive disruption and a massive amount of application in a lot of different therapeutic classes. I believe that over time that Skye can really replicate that type of validation, and we have an impressive set of milestones that cover research, preclinical and clinical, as well as collaborations that are going to continue to help provide that confidence in terms of development and execution. And most importantly, the data to really support the value of such an approach that we're taking in our lead program as well as other applications. So I'll get into the next slide here. Our lead molecule is focused on a large unmet medical need referred to as glaucoma, and it has very limited treatment options. Most of these are current treatments that are standard of care are focused on symptoms, or they're really focused on slowing down the vision loss. So there's really no cure to reverse glaucoma. And in this visual, you can see what a patient with glaucoma will experience with respect to their vision, with the left showing normal vision, and as the disease progresses, the vision continues to get impaired. Glaucoma is currently the leading cause of irreversible blindness. The market is about 80 million patients globally, and that's still probably underreported because it hasn't been well reported in developing countries. And it's continuing to grow and expected to be over 100 million patients. I'm going to quickly talk about the biology here, just to provide a bit of backdrop on glaucoma before we get into how the drug works. In this visual, it shows a normal eye on the left, on a healthy eye, and a normal eye has very good production of fluid and drainage of that fluid drained out of the eye. So that liquid is called aqueous humor, and it's constantly being produced, and it's constantly being drained out of the eye. It's responsible for transporting nutrients. It's also responsible for inflating the eye and giving that spherical shape that we see. However, when the fluid cannot flow out of the eye and out of the chambers freely, it increases the intraocular pressure, and that's what can damage the optic nerve and lead to vision loss. So towards the right side of the slide, you can see that is what causes that crush-like injury to the optic nerve cells, and that's at the back of the eye, and that's responsible for really relaying that information back to the brain. And if you have lack of drainage around the aqueous humor, it plays a very important vital role. And if you don't intervene, that fluid's going to build, it's not going to drain, and it's going to lead to that injury. So clearly, a really tough disease and a large market. And the current treatments for glaucoma are really focused specifically on that particular problem. They're either focused on the production, limiting the production of the fluid, or the outflow of the fluid. And most of the current response rates are still low double digits. And the current therapies and what patients are experiencing, especially when patients have been taking monotherapies, they've pretty much been ineffective. Patients are developing tolerance. Unfortunately, they're not. Most of these drugs are not tackling some of the other potential mechanisms at play in the eye, and we'll get into how Skye is focused on that. But one of the important kind of breakthroughs that's happened in the glaucoma treatment space has been the use of combinations. So the combinations appear to improve the response rates, but still patients can develop tolerance, and and really they're focused on just slowing down disease progression. So the lack of innovation really calls for a new class of therapy, and that's where this relevance is of THC to glaucoma. And a lot of people have heard of this correlation between THC and helping, but haven't connected the science behind it. So the main thing here is that cannabinoid receptors are found throughout the body, and they play a vital role in managing many different body functions. The eye is very rich with these cannabinoid receptors, and offers very strong cannabinoid receptor labeling in different parts, or basically key parts of the eye, and specifically in tissues involved in managing the fluid production as well as the drainage, and also and also related to cells responsible for vision. So we have actual data that shows of the applicability here with the key parts of the eye, such as the trabecular meshwork, and I'm going to share that in 1 second. But essentially, the effects of THC are really mediated by these cannabinoid receptors. So if you can have that labeling, we've been able to show lowering of intraocular pressure activity, and there's been a lot of data that actually supports this. The first report goes back to the early 70s, but there's been multiple studies since then, and each one of these studies, you can see it highlights validation of the intraocular pressure reducing effect of THC. So that's really powerful evidence in terms of what's happening, what the applicability is, and I think we can link it back to what we've already are starting to witness in the market in terms of this rigorous approach that's required in drug development in order to really see a drug having that cause and effect on a consistent basis. And this is the challenge it's been with regards to the current approaches. I mean, if you just take THC, it's really effective, but it also has some very poor kind of controls and side effects. The systemic delivery isn't when you look at it from systemic delivery, it requires really a high dose in order to achieve that therapeutic effect. It has very poor bioavailability, and there's the associated kind of psychotropic effects that you get from THC. So you have to take this really high doses, and it's not really well and consistent for patients. And then a lot of people, also kind of looked at doing a local delivery, and local delivery of just taking the extract has its own challenges because it's not formulated to be able to get to the right parts of the eye. So that's where I think Skye is the Skye approach is really differentiated. What we've done here is taken a molecule and enhanced the delivery to overcome all of these kind of challenges that you see with just taking THC that's been used to date. And what we've constructed is a prodrug, or a medication that when it's administered, it metabolizes into the pharmacological active drug. So basically, we're working on unlocking the therapeutic value of THC using this very rational drug design that's bioengineered to develop a synthetic prodrug of THC called THC VHS. And you can follow along in all the publications that we've done showing from the evolution of just THC to our proprietary formulation of THC VHS. So what's unique here is that THC VHS gets converted in the anterior chamber of the eye into THC. So as I've alluded to before, THC binds to cannabinoid receptors that are located in this ocular tissue, and that's what's really responsible for maintaining intraocular pressure. All right, so let's get into a little bit of the data here. First is just we've done studies that have shown head-to-head in healthy rabbits, showing that THC was statistically superior to two of the top globally prescribed drugs for glaucoma, latanoprost and timolol. Not only is it showing that THC VHS is better than these drugs, but it also, in terms of lowering intraocular pressure, but also showing that it's sustaining a longer duration than these therapies. So we're not really touching on mechanism here, but it is highlighting that we're either getting some sort of increased flow or improving drainage in order to reduce the intraocular pressure. So it's targeting those key functions of the eye. We're continuing to do additional head-to-head studies, and we're looking forward to share that data later this year. The other important thing is looking beyond just a lowering of intraocular pressure. So we know that the human brain, or outside of the human brain, the eye has one of the highest densities of cannabinoid receptors in the body. So that probably explains why THC works so well when compared to other therapies. But we specifically looked at what the markers are for lowering, or when THC is released from the prodrug, what are the other biomarkers associated with this? And this slide highlights a collaboration that we did with Glaucoma, which evaluated actual ocular tissue, and they did it in a 3D model, and they're specifically looking at the trabecular meshwork, which is a key function that's required for drainage of that fluid. It then showed that THC released from the prodrug also lowers the biomarkers associated with inflammation and fibrosis. And the graphs show that that it led basically that THC leads to increase in outflow and drainage, but from a gene expression perspective, that there's also this reduction of the markers for inflammation and fibrosis, which is the key important takeaway, that basically that there's an anti-inflammatory and anti-fibrotic indicators that are the important markers to show the effects of THC, VHS beyond just the IOP lowering evidence that we shared in the previous slide. All right, so we've established that glaucoma is a large market. It really falls into three areas. One is in this primary open-angle glaucoma, the one that's linked to intraocular pressure. The other is overall ocular hypertension, which is leading to symptoms of glaucoma. And the third is normal tension glaucoma, or also it's known as low tension normal pressure glaucoma. And what I wanted to highlight in this slide is that it's essentially there's a disproportionate number of patients that have a normal IOP level in Asian countries compared to what we see in North America, with a lot of patients having primary open-angle glaucoma. So we still have a lot to kind of learn about the causes of low tension glaucoma, but it is linked to the damage of the optic nerve without the elevated intraocular pressure. So there's essentially a large patient population that could really benefit from some of the other properties that we covered in this last set of data that I just went over, where it looks at potential neuroprotective properties around the drug. And when we look at the commercial landscape, there's really nothing out there that's tackling the broader neuroprotection capabilities that we can go after from a mechanism standpoint. Now, it's still early to do that, so I don't want to lead anybody down the wrong path here, but it's definitely a compelling opportunity. The first step is to show how we can be superior in terms of lowering intraocular pressure and those benefits against standard of care, and then we can see how these other mechanisms can come into play to tackle this population. And by the way, there is early evidence of applications of cannabinoids in this role for neuroprotection. So there's actually been multiple studies that have shown different animal species and models of glaucoma have demonstrated the ability of cannabinoids to promote that healthy and survival optic nerve cells that, so far the data is fairly shallow in terms of the number of papers out there, but there's several studies that are really good indicators that there can be shown to have improvement. We actually have an optic nerve injury model in rats that is planned in this quarter, where we want to highlight and validate the neuroprotection properties of THC VHS. So we're looking forward to sharing that data with you this year as well. Okay, so in terms of all of that background is really meant to target moving into the clinic swiftly. So clearly, we walked through some of the research rationale of why THC is relevant, gone over some of the preclinical and studies, but there's several clinical and preclinical enabling studies that are underway right now that are leading to our important milestone for the company of initiating this phase 1 human clinical trial. Again, it's assessment of we're assessing lowering of intraocular pressure, but we're doing this in terms of a trial design where we're looking at healthy volunteers as well as patients that have elevated IOP. This study is expected to begin before the end of the year in Australia. So we're really positioned to drive value. The milestones are kind of easy to follow along. There's been a very focused development plan here in terms of driving value through generating the key data that's required to get the company into the clinic, but at the same time recognize the importance of cannabinoid research and see how we can take that kind of rational drug design and expand our pipeline. So our goals here in terms of positioning for value creation are one, improving the valuation relative to the peer group in the clinical side. As you can see, we have milestones that are very centric to showing data and human studies. That's going to be the major inflection. And along the way, we're continuing to show all the key steps, including the press release that we went over, that we issued today that talked about having our manufacturing material ready for GLP tox, for our toxicity studies. So each of these components should be providing confidence of what you'd expect to see in the human study. The other important thing has been speed of execution. So realizing that growth opportunity as fast as possible. Of course, there's been challenges in the last year with regards to things that have been out of the company's control, but we have been very focused and continuing to focus on the speed of execution. So when you put all those things together, I think you really have a tremendous opportunity for additional collaborations and partnering opportunities, adding to the pipeline with other applications, and then clearly, looking for funding opportunities that extend beyond dilutive opportunities as well. So we really are interested in repeating the model and building long-term value for shareholders. The capitalization table, you can kind of see for yourselves. It's very straightforward. I'll just finish off here with a couple comments around management team. So I've worked with this management team over the last 2 decades, actually, in various different companies. So very proud to be working with them again, and we're continuing to evolve and grow on our team as well. And then lastly, on the scientific advisory board and the board of directors, I'm really excited about continuing to expand each of these different areas. We've added to our board already, but we'll look to add additional independent members. On the clinical advisory side, we have a all-star team of ophthalmologists and practicing researchers that have been at the cutting edge of what's happening in glaucoma. And then on the scientific advisory side, we've just recently added 2 members that are the world-renowned experts in the cannabinoid space. So we're looking forward to continuing to work closely with all of these wonderful people that have a lot of expertise, not only in glaucoma, but in cannabinoids as well. All right, so that's all the time I have today for the presentation, but I'm happy to dive into questions. Looks like we don't have any Q&A, but I can kind of wrap it up here with one kind of important slide just to recap the investment thesis for the company. So we're really in a unique competitive position here with what Skye is focused on in terms of overall cannabinoid research. As I mentioned in the beginning of the presentation, it's quite an interesting period to be involved in cannabinoid research because of the wide applicability across many different therapeutic classes. But Skye's laser focused on demonstrating value creation with our lead program, and that's to show greater intraocular pressure lowering than the market-leading glaucoma therapeutics. So we can look forward to first human data on that once this clinical trial is initiated this year. The next is we have this broader potential in terms of neuroprotection capabilities. And I think that's applicable across many different therapeutics classes as well, not just in terms of its applicability in glaucoma. So, there's quite a large opportunity that we can go after long term. Again, the first is to really demonstrate lowering of intraocular pressure in glaucoma. We have key preclinical data that's expected to be shared this year between Q2 and in early Q3 that's meant to highlight new head-to-head data in showing lowering of intraocular pressure against leading standard of care, as well as the neuroprotection validation of THC-VHS. And then finally, all of this is moving towards our first clinical trial, which is a major inflection for this company that's been kind of focused on this area of research for some time now. But I've been very excited about pushing that speed with the team of getting this first clinical trial off the ground and doing it quickly in a very cost-effective and resource-effective manner. So we're going to be initiating that, and it's going to include an assessment of lowering of how effective THC-VHS is in terms of lowering intraocular pressure. And then this, I think, leads to some significant development opportunities that extend beyond what we're doing in terms of THC-VHS. And we're excited about continuing to share about the broader pipeline, specifically CBD-VHS, which we haven't spent any time on in this presentation, but this year we are going to be outlining a development plan for that program. And together, I think it opens up multiple collaborative opportunities. There's been some really good evidence of licensing deals happening in the ocular space after phase 2. So that's where our key focus is quickly moving through phase 1 so we can start the phase 2 trial and generate the data that's necessary for a broader licensing deal. Okay, that's all the time we have for today. So feel free to contact us at the emails provided on the last slide here, and always happy to answer any questions that come on the company.
Thank you. This does conclude today's webcast. Thank you for your participation and have a wonderful day.